Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's second in a series of webinars focused on the retail sector, aligned to the Supply Chain Readiness Assessment Tool. Today we will focus on creating strategic advantage in the retail industry. Our assessment takes about 30 minutes of your leadership's time to build an aligned action plan. Again, we appreciate you joining us today in the webinar and ask you to participate in the chat as well as the polling questions, pollev.com/Greg Schlegel 910. Again, this is the second in the series of webinars focused on different industries, and this week we will be focused on the retail industry. My name is Jim Vries, founder and president of Enhance International Group. I will be the host of today's webinar, and today we have Connor Fincham from Uphaven Management to help us out. Thank you, Connor. Joining us, of course, is our key speaker, Greg Schlegel, founder and managing partner of Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium, which was founded in 2010. And Greg is a celebrated speaker and esteemed author of the book, Supply Chain Risk Management, an Emerging Discipline, published in 2015. Greg, a few words of introduction.
You bet. Thanks, Jim. Welcome, everyone. I am the founder of Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. We've been in business, as Jim said, for about 13 years. We operate in 23 countries. We'll give you a thumbnail sketch a little bit deeper in a couple of minutes. I've taught supply chain risk management at Lehigh University for 10 years, still teach ERM, Enterprise Risk Management, at Villanova University here in the States in Pennsylvania. Spent 8 years as an IBM supply chain executive consultant, spent 30 years as a supply chain practitioner, perhaps like many of you on the call, for several Fortune 100 manufacturers, and have taught supply chain management in 4 different universities here in the States, and was past president of the Apex organization, now called ASCM. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Greg. Why don't you just go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, we said we'd give you a thumbnail sketch. This is who we are and what we do at the consortium. Again, we're 32 companies. That's about 1,700 risk professionals around the globe. We break our areas into three pillars. In the middle, you can see we do a lot of education. We also do consulting, and we have software as a service solutions on the right, all geared towards supply chain risk and resiliency. On the left, we provide value in 5 areas. We have online education. We have 2 online certificate courses, one in manufacturing and actually one in services public healthcare. We do a lot of journey coaching and consulting, where we lead, guide, direct, and coach companies on their risk journey. We have software solutions that focus on supply chain risk and resiliency. We have 2 online readiness assessment tools. The supply chain management readiness assessment tool we're going to talk about in detail today. And our newest is what we call a supply chain risk and resiliency 90-day action plan tool. It uses AI ML algorithms to essentially depict your risk maturity, risk appetite, and risk culture with action items. So that's a profile of who we are and what we do. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Greg. A little introduction on Enhance International Group, EIG. We're a group of passionate experts to guide your transformation. We have over 50 consulting companies, and SaaS providers focusing to enable your enterprise. EIG serves as a master integrator. You could call us a Swiss Army knife to bring the best and the brightest companies to you. Our company is dedicated to empowering your organization's workforce by leveraging EIG's partners' tenured expertise. Our goal is to provide collective, collaborative, experienced thought leadership to enable organizations to deliver self-sustaining, positive margin growth, the competitive advantage through 90-day action plans. Reviewing the bicycle slide that our team built a number of years ago. And what it is the model of a company's ecosystem. And it has the two wheels. The wheel on the right, the strategy wheel, is driving the strategy, and the left wheel is the visibility wheel and driving execution. So we always say that one rotation cycle with a sound strategy will drive many execution cycles. So in summary, a strongly linked strategy to execution ecosystem results in positive momentum for your company, its employees, customers, suppliers, and stockholders. Quoting Albert Einstein, life is like a bicycle. To keep your balance, you need to keep on moving. So we're going to keep moving here and move on to the deliverables for today. And the first deliverable is to describe how process maturity enhances the bottom line financial performance. How do we link these two things together in the retail sector and leverage your strengths so you can improve your weaknesses? And then provide real life retail case studies, and then provide retail industry supply chain best practices. With that, we go back to our polling question on your job positions. We see some purchasing, supply chain, some consultants, finance, supply chain management. Greg, your thoughts?
It's great to see. Always good to see different disciplines on the call within, I'll say, operations and supply chain. And a finance manager here and there. It's great to see. Thanks for thanks for joining.
Awesome. So with that, we're going to move on to the agenda today, and we're going to cover first the compelling reasons to act, and then we'll get into a quick review of supply chain assessment methodology, and then into the supply chain management maturity, and then a deeper dive into the retail supply chain management landscape and 2 case studies and some helpful hints. Anytime throughout the webinar, feel free to enter into the chat your questions, comments, and we'll get to them as we can throughout the webinar. So the compelling reasons to act, our first section here, focused on retail. So with that, Greg.
You bet. Thanks, Jim. In this section, we thought we'd start with Gartner's top 25 supply chain organizations for 2023. If you're not familiar with Gartner, Gartner provides top 25 supply chains. They evaluate them. They put them in this type of profile, top down, left to right. They do this every year. Gartner is a world-renowned supply chain research consultancy. So they've been around for a good long time. Pretty good at what they do. All right. Just want to share with you a couple of threads here on the top right on the screen. These are what they call the masters. You can see who they are, mostly CPG and retail. These masters have been in the top 25 for at least the last 10 years. So Gartner differentiates them into these guys and gals are pretty darn good at supply chain. Then we have the top 25 from 1 to 25 top down. You can see as you go through, there's a heck of a lot of what we call CPG, consumer packaged goods companies. There are a few retail organizations. You'll see Walmart. They're over there on the left. They're number 9. Inditex is number 13. That's really Zara, the retail apparel company. You see McDonald's down on the bottom there, and on the very bottom of the pyramid is Alibaba. So there are some retail folks in there. They are definitely masters, a couple up on the top right. So we wanted to start with getting you grounded on the top 25 supply chains around the globe. Next. we thought we'd also share with you the top 100 retailers by revenue coming from National Retail Federation, the NRF. And we just put the top 10 here. You can see it's the usual suspects around the globe, but it's basically not supply chain. It's just driven by top-down revenue. So with that as a backdrop, we'll go to the next slide and talk about 6 retail trends and supply chain planning challenges for 2023 coming from logistics viewpoints. Let's just take a quick scan. Number 1, continuing disruptions in transportation and sourcing materials. That's going to continue, but it is getting better, especially for you, the shippers. Number 2, changing trends in lifestyle and disposable income. That has to do with the changing demographic and the way in which customers are now purchasing. So number 3, increasing points of interaction and delivery. This is called the omni-channel. What does that mean? That means I manufacture something and I ship it direct to the customer. Now we have, from a retail point of view, we have in-store pickup where you buy online, you come in, you have a window, you come and you pick up your material. Number 4, digital transformation and autonomous planning. Well, digital transformation is starting. I would say we do that first. That's digitizing your supply chain, which is not easy. And autonomous planning, folks, from us to you, that's still a good ways off. All right, but it's coming. Number 5, sustainability regulations. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. That's the greenhouse gas reduction. That is what we call circularity in supply chain, and also ESG, economic, social, and governance types of frameworks. And last, cybersecurity and threats, still always prevalent, got to be advised about that, but those are what logistics Viewpoint saw as 6 retail trends and challenges. Next, we wanted to, busy slide, but we wanted to give you a sense of the supply chain risk landscape from a retail point of view. And we always like to ask the question to the audience, rhetorical of sorts, where are you in your supply chain by sector? Meaning, where is your company positioned inside the 45-degree angle type of supply chain landscape within that sector? Going from top to bottom, are you material supplier? Are you into agricultural? Again, some type of raw material. Are you manufacturing and converting those raw materials? Are you an OEM, original equipment manufacturer, meaning producing certain finished products? Are you a distributor? Are you a wholesaler? Are you a retailer? Are you the consumer? So we always like to ask and put it into perspective where your company resides within your own industry sector supply chain. And then up above and below are basically the risks and the threats to all of us in that supply chain. So we wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like in terms of end-to-end supply chain within the retail arena. So speaking of risks, we thought we'd share with you the top 10 risks in retail grocery. We picked that. That's coming out of Retail Watch. Top 5, third-party discrimination. That you have to be concerned about that. That's your supply base. Alcoholic sales. Great, good margins if you can do it, but it's not for everyone. All depends on your risk appetite. In-store pharmacies, again, that has to do with quality. You got to be concerned about the quality. Number 4, slip and fall accidents happen all the time. That's a safety issue. Number 5, tainted food. That is a recall. That's a risk event. It can happen in retail grocery. Number 6, daycare operations. That's not for everyone, but some retail grocery companies are trying it. 7, robberies. Okay, that's a safety issue. Fire, always a safety issue. Tractor trailer deliveries, that has an issue in terms of your inventory and your flow, meaning can they deliver OTIF, on time in full? And finally, number 10, fuel sales like Costco and so forth here in the United States. That's not for everyone because there's a host of risks associated with it. So with that, we wanted to share with you some insights on retail, large, the landscape, and some risks that we saw. And I'll turn it back to Jim.
And as we're talking here on the poll EV, there's a question there that says, what are your challenges in retail? So please do enter into poll EV your thoughts. And that's the next, I believe, the next polling question. If it will come up here. What's going on?
It's not playing well with others.
Yeah, this is weird. Gonna escape out of here and wow. That's the first time this has happened. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yep, give it another try.
1 second. So while I'm having my technical issues, you can be entering into the response there for that. I'm coming right back in. And we have some responses here. Late delivery, component delays, financial health of suppliers. Please enter your thoughts in here. Thank you. I see rising costs, delays, shortages. Awesome. Keep them coming. Love to see the action here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the interaction. It's always interesting. It gives you an opportunity to get engaged with us. That's great. Appreciate it.
So cost.
Well, the nice part about this is it's actually a frequency table, folks. So the more the same phrase comes in, the larger the font. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, delivery delays. Yeah, I think that's what we've been hearing is that the delays in related shortages and ship shorts, not getting what you asked for.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Greg?
Well, we always call it in risk. We always call it the long arm of COVID, folks. We're still wrestling with the long arm, even though our folks are coming back. We have maybe a full cadre of employees back working in the supply chain, but there are still what we call the bullwhip latent effects of the 2-year pandemic. So it's not over. The long arm is still pinging us all in supply chain. So we just keep moving forward. But thanks a lot for getting engaged with our poll questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. With that, we'll move on to the next section. And again, enter any of your questions into the chat or comments. We'd love to see them. And with that, we'll move on to the next section on the supply chain management methodology. And we're going to be kicking it off with Greg.
Yeah, you bet. We thought we'd start here, giving you a sense of the genesis of this supply chain management assessment tool. So it was kind of born out of the first of a kind MBA program at Lehigh University, excuse me, back in 2010. It was so well received by the MBA students that we took it on the road. The tool's been operating within the confines of the consortium for the last 10 years. We've utilized it in our classrooms, our workshops, our webinars, and we have several derivations that we use in our client engagements. All right. We we have seen over 3,000 companies come through the tool over the last 12 years now. So, and we've actually upgraded the tool, and it's now within what we call an LMS, learning management system platform. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the platform. So what do you see on the left? I'll give you a quick thumbnail sketch. Essentially, it's what we think is the end-to-end elements of a good supply chain. There are 13 tenets. We color code them. The blue are strategic. The red are tactical on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side of the clock are the operational tenets. So we think these tenets make up a good end-to-end supply chain. All right. The consortium has taken 30 years of supply chain management experience, 12 years in the risk arena, and we've developed this assessment tool, which is about 92 questions and 13 tenets. And the star chart is a maturity chart. What you're looking at is a maturity chart depicting how mature your company's supply chain processes are. Not that supplier 10 has a problem. It's not that detailed. It's overall, and it looks at your supply chain processes all within those 13 tenets. As you go through the 92 questions, you can see that a company's response is the black line. When you're done, it profiles your answers, and the black line is an indication of your as-is condition as you see it. All right. So remember, the farther away from the center you are, the less mature your supply chain processes are. And inherently, the farther you are away from the center, the higher the risk. And that's what you see. We superimpose 3 risk circles. The green is about at level 3. The orange, a little more risk and less mature. And then we call the red the ring of fire, which is anything outside, on or outside that ring of fire. You have very immature processes, and you have a lot of inherent risks in your supply chain. So with that, we'll move on and give you a quick thumbnail sketch of our total approach. We talked on the left-hand side, we just described to you tier 1. There are 4 tiers. Tier 1 is potentially a single user approach. You can go in. I failed to mention this tool is free. Tier 1 is free. You go in and it'll ask you questions, and then you find out where you are. It identifies surprises, might surprise you in certain supply chain processes. It gives you a tenant maturity in terms of as is today. And the big issue is it drives a dialogue. It drives conversation about how could we not be more mature in this particular, and that's what we want. We want it to start the dialogue. Tier 2, little different. We'll profile that in a minute. That's more of a division and a group approach that essentially says, who are you? Are you do you have an aligned vision? Because we advocate several different disciplines to fill it in. It gives you strengths and weaknesses, which we'll talk about in a minute. And you get an aligned team consensus of tier 1 and tier 2. On the other side, tier 3, this is more of a roadmap. Now we're talking a little more external evaluations of your supply chain as well. What do you get in tier 3? It's kind of a group approach, all right? And it gives you your industry position, meaning where are you in your supply chain maturity within your own industry sector? We have enough information to feel confident to do that for you. And then it asks you more questions about, of those 13 tenets, which one is more important to you? Top down. Another set of questions says, okay, which one are you, which tenet are you most satisfied with? So you get importance, satisfaction, if you will, sorry, and then you get a tenet prioritization. By answering those questions, you can start to build a tenet prioritization of what to do first, second, or third, and it seeds action plans. And then last on the right is tier 4, so we call a playbook that puts all the tiers together in terms of even a book like a McKinsey type report. And essentially it's how to do the right things, do them the right way, in the right order. Things like OTIF for retail, on time in full, that improves your customer sat and improves market share, and maybe NPI turns, which is asset management. 2 critical areas in retail, and that'll improve your return on net assets and your cash flow. So with that, we wanted to give you an approach. We'll talk a little bit more about tier 1. Tier 1, this is a real live output from a company. All right. We call it the mainstream. As you can see up in the top right, we actually calculate a number relative to 0 to 10. This is a recap. This company is essentially considered a mainstream within their industry. You can see up on the top left, there's a gauge. The gauge essentially shows you whether you're leadership, mainstream, apprentice, or in the ring of fire. So those are our categories in tier 1. You can see the output of the chart again, the 13 tenets, the strategic, tactical, and operational, blue, red, and green. This is an as-is case. And what do you get? The output is you get to assess your mature and immature processes. You get to investigate the dialogue about those immature processes, and you should also reinforce the mature processes because those are your strength. All right, practical call to action. You address the surprises. That's what we advocate. So you develop perhaps an action plan to address your immature processes and get your stakeholders aligned. What does good look like when you're done? Improvements being made and notable increased maturity over time. I'll give you a real live example before we go to the next slide. We just got a request from a past user who went through the tool 1 year ago and asked to go through the tool again because they've made some significant changes in their mind. They wanted to go through the objective questions again to demonstrate to their executives that they've made improvements in several of the original supply chain processes. So very good to see that being used, the tool being used as a benchmark. All right, one other element. We thought we'd share with you a couple of testimonials. We have many, but I'll just pick 2. Number 1 today, retail. A retail executive basically said the SCM readiness assessment was very thorough and truly an end-to-end holistic assessment. The scope was much wider than I initially anticipated. This comes from a global CPG exec. And then I'll just go down to the third one, Jim, aerospace. We always thought this was interesting. You can see it is appropriate across multiple industry sectors. We like the aerospace assessment. The gentleman said, your assessment tool was the most complete supply chain management assessment method I've seen to date. And I've been in the business for 40 years, and that was a heavy industry aerospace defense exec. So very encouraging to us that the tool in its questions of discovery can help just about every industry. You see 5 of them here. There are many more as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And just a background on the online tool, which was launched just over a year ago. We've been having this tool out there for over 10 years and launched it online to make it free for all of you. And we've had over 240 users up to date and over 130 completed assessments spanning many, many industries. But you may ask, well, which industries are we seeing the most? Government NGOs are predominant. A lot also in that is some U.S. departments of defense and so forth. The CPG retail area is our second. So we have many assessments completed so that if you're looking to benchmark how are you relative to other folks in the retail sector and you want to benchmark, we offer that service also. And then aerospace is number 3, which was our last webinar, one of our previous webinars. And then in the distribution and warehousing space, we have quite a number of assessments completed, as well as electronics, which will be our next webinar coming up, and automotive and oil and gas. So that gives you a little bit of a complexion of the completions of the online assessment. Again, this is free. Feel free to take the assessment. If you've taken the assessment and you want to take it again, as Greg said, just give us a call or drop us a note and we'll help you out with that. With that, we'll enter into the next section, which is the overall retail supply chain management maturity and in the retail sector. And we thought we'd break it out into what we call strategic, tactical, and operational. And from a strategic perspective, we'll be looking at category management. And this time horizon is 1 to 5 years, and normally is a guide on the enterprise, to marshal resources and determine actions to support the mission, goals, and objectives of your company. It specifies how to satisfy customers, grow your business, compete in the environment, manage the organization, and develop capabilities to achieve financial goals. And again, we will go further in detail into one example of category management, which is critical for retail. The second area that we look at is the T in STO is tactical. And here, as an example, we're looking at logistics. And this is a time horizon of 1 to 15 months, includes sales and operations planning, and normally a set of functions, plans, production plan, sales plan, all your planning, your yearly planning is typically you talk about, and synchronizing these activities across all your different functions. So every function has your yearly plan. And here you get into capacity levels, staffing, funding for the year, and immediate goals of the organization. Then the next level in the STO, of course, is operational supply chain management. And the time horizon here is 1 to 4 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks if you're planning. Sometimes it's stagnant on the monthly basis. Sometimes it's a rolling 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how mature you are. Normally consists of short-term plans and schedules and detailing specific actions. And operational plans are more detailed and encompass a much shorter time, this time horizon, much shorter, and includes things like production planning, detailed scheduling, project planning, engineering, IT, quality, inventory, basically what you're doing to deliver your finished goods on a daily and weekly basis. So that gives you an overview of the STO. Now we'll dive into category management, which is an example of for retailing that you would be doing at a strategic level. And again, category management and retailing and purchasing concept that has been in which the range of products purchased for the business and organization are sold to the retailer and broken down into discrete groups of similar or related products. These groups are known as the product categories, and examples of product categories could be tin fish, washing detergent, toothpaste, and a systematic discipline approach to managing that product category. It was coined by Brian Harris a number of years ago. There are normally about 8 steps in category management for the offering. We'll just go through these very quickly. First, we need to define the category in which your product is going to be rolled out in, assess the role of that product and where it plays with the existing category, if the category needs to be adjusted or added, assess the product category's performance as well as is competitive in the marketplace. That's number 3. Number 4, this leads to the set of objectives and targets that will require you to baseline your performance and your scorecard. And then 5, you devise your strategies to make sure that you can meet those targets and margins, and start to devise some risk management principles on how to achieve your goals. And then 6 will then affect the category tactics. You devise those tactics, and 6 will be the updated to meet your new market-based approach. Then it's all about implementation. Number 7, which is execute, 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 what everybody talks about. And then finally, we review and then close the loop and then start over again. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of strategic types of actions in the retailing arena aligned to products. At the tactical level, we're going to use the example of supply chain, moving things around in your supply chain. We're going to start with the traditional suppliers to the store. This is where everybody thinks about when they think of logistics, suppliers to the customer. But of course, there's other value chains now. There's the warehouse to the online shop, ship direct, sometimes called, and then a mobile, our stores directly to the mobile shopper. So there's a lot of different permutations and derivatives of these supply chains, but this is to give you a feeling of the tactical perspective when we say tactical in retail. The third example in retail is the planograms in retail for the operational level. And planograms are also known as planograms, schematics. And these POGs, or simple plans, are visual representations of the store's products or services on display, and they're considered a tool for visual merchandising. And it's really the effectiveness of the planogram can be measured by the sales volume generated by a specific area being diagrammed. Of course, as a retailer, you want to maximize throughput. You want as many things purchased as possible. So you want those key leading products that have the greatest turns and greatest throughput volume on those leaders' shelf. So the question is, as a retailer, you want to have those high volume SKUs up there, and then you want to follow by having the less purchased SKUs. In the drink area, since we're looking at drinks, I thought, Coke and Pepsi are always vying to be in the leaders. In the past, all you would see is Coke and Pepsi on the leaders. Now you're seeing juices, you see kombucha. Because why? Because people are buying that. And maybe those products they're actually buying that space. And then Coca-Cola owns juicers. And so it's no longer Coke and Pepsi just owning what we know as Coca-Cola and Pepsi, but they also own many of the other juices and bottled waters that we now see on the shelf. So it's much more complex than it was 20, 30 years ago. But, being the laggard, being on the other aisle is not the place you want your product to be, and the retailers are controlling that. So with that, we're going to switch over to a trivia question. We're going to change it up here this week in our webinar. And in 2012, Cadillac Fairview bought out the leases of what retailer for $400 million? Many of the locations later became Nordstrom's. So just give you a little bit of time to answer that question. And if you have any questions in the chat about risks or supply chain challenges that you have in the retail sector, feel free to respond in the chat. Greg, your thoughts?
I'm not going to give away the answer.
All right. Well, I'm going to see what people are saying here. If it will respond. Yeah. Is it responding? I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with the software. Well, it looks like we're having a little bit of difficulties with this software here. So apologize if you entered it in. We'll give
If you
the
know
answer.
the answer, put it in the chat. Ha ha
Yeah, I
ha.
put it in the chat. So this is going back. This is if you think of, we'll give you a hint. This Cadillac Fairview is in what city, Greg?
I'm not sure.
Well, Chicago.
Uh,
So that might give
yeah,
it away on what many locations became Nordstrom. Well, the answer is, you know the answer, Greg?
I'm not going to render an opinion. I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, the answer is Sears. That's when Sears kind of went buckle up finally, when they started selling their real estate. So um, uh, it's very strange that it locked up.
Yeah,
Okay, with
I
that,
don't know why. Yeah,
all right. Well, we'll move on.
yeah.
On to your section, Greg.
Okay, you bet. Uh, Thanks. We wanted to do a deeper dive a little bit into the retail supply chain management landscape, especially associated with the tool. So with that, we'll move into a little deeper dive on what we call tier two. We've given you the profile of tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. We talked about tier 1, which is the as is case. This is tier 1 and tier 2. You can see on the left-hand side, there's the 13 tenets of this company. It's kind of a heat map. You see the blue, the red, and the green, which are strategic, tactical, and operational tenets we talked about. You can see the as is black line that depicts this company's as is maturity associated with each supply chain process. Remember, the farther away you are from the center, the less mature your process is, and the higher the inherent risk. What we do in tier 2 is we superimpose your strategic, tactical, and operational answers on top of the black line. It gets a little busy on the left, so you can see on the top right, we've broken out the strategic, tactical, and operational averages. And then the reason we do that is we like to calculate the essential strength. Where is the strength, maturity strength within your supply chain within those 13 tenets? And what you can see is, remember, the lower the lower the unit number, the closer to the center, the stronger the tenet. In this particular picture, this company is fairly stronger in the tactical area in the red. You can see it on the top right. And then you have the green, which is the operational, and the blue, which is strategic. And so what we do is we superimpose those answers, that picture on top of the as is to give you not only tier 1, which is your as is, but where's your strengths and where are your weaknesses? And we'll talk more about them in our real live case studies in a minute. So we'll go to the next slide. Again, just almost a recap of tier 2 and the tenets within the organization. We go strategic, tactical, operational. Again, within strategic, we have 3 tenets. Excuse me. 1 is leadership. That is your culture. 2 is a balanced scorecard. That's a framework. We think that is very good. And 3 is intentional redundancies within your supply base. In the middle, in the tactical, we have 5 tenets. 1 is demand management. That's how do you deal with your customers? Number 2 is what kind of industry are you in today? Number 3, information systems. How sophisticated are your information systems supporting supply chain? Number 4, integrated supply chain. Do you take an end-to-end view of your supply chain from suppliers to customers. And then fifth is risk mitigation planning. Do you actually do risk mitigation in your supply chain? And then finally, on the right, operational elements, we have 5. Supply chain processes go across the board. Supply, what's your supply base look like? Number 3, S&OP, do you have one? S&OP stands for Sales and Operations Planning, where you attempt to get people together once a month and you try to balance demand and supply for your supply chain. Number 4 is logistics. How do you do logistics, inbound and outbound? And then 5 is, are you agile? Is your supply chain agile? Yes or no? And so we go through those questions of discovery. Those are the 13 tenets. We wanted to just recap them before we talk about some use cases. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. So we'll get into it, right into the strategic area aligned to retail. And we first identified, Greg and I identified leadership as the tenant. And under that, the leadership under that is sustainability regulations, greenhouse gas reduction, for instance, could be a challenge that you have is how do we maintain that? And where does that come into? Well, first you need to find out what your KPIs are. In this case, we identified KPIs along with fines, months to address risks, compliance revenue, meaning if you don't abide by that, what revenue opportunities will you lose by not complying with the different sustainability regulations as it aligns to your products and or your retailing. And then aligned to that are, again, the greenhouse gases, social, that's asking, where are your products being sourced from? What is that costing you from a top line revenue perspective, and meeting compliance of government regulations, aligned to health and safety. Greg brought these things up before, and then fraud, bribery, and corruption as a ESG group. So under that, under improvements, of course, you want to be more compliant. And in that is what risks mitigation are you doing to drive compliance for sustainability? And then what's the value to your bottom line is your cost avoidance reduction, your circular supply chain validation, reducing waste within your supply chain to drive cost while being more sustainable. And then brand share growth that we talked about, that top line revenue per screw, and getting those increases. So that gives you an idea on how you can use the tool to identify first leadership and then drive this through your organization right down to action planning and value props. Our second example is at the tactical level under demand management. And here we're looking at changing trends in lifestyle and disposable income. That's because of the demand management challenges. The KPIs you'll be looking at is product life cycle, your lifetime value of your customers, the difference between what the customer wanted to receive and what you delivered. Are you even measuring that? Most companies don't even measure that. They just measure what their promise is, not what the customer actually wants. And then, of course, the write-offs that occur because you're not delivering what the customer is expecting. You have overstocks on certain items, and you can't get rid of it because of expiration and so forth, because your throughput is not where you expected it to be. So your demand is off from your supply. What is that costing you? So things to work on is understanding what your true underlying customer unmet needs are, the voice of the customer, VOC, competitive analysis on products and customers, making sure you're meeting those trends of the marketplace, and really understanding the customer needs and driving visibility throughout your organization so everybody from your CSRs, your customer service reps, to your sales folks, all the way down through the supply chain, truly understand what the true needs of the customer are, and that the financial inventory and visibility, that you understand what you have in stock, what don't you have in stock, what are you short, and how you're driving that. So visibility, of course, is the key to driving and meeting the needs of your customers. And the value wallet piece of this, of course, is then top line growth. Are you balancing margin and volume to drive your top line? Cash flow? Do your customers pay on time? Right sizing your organization to meet the demand requirements, being able to flex to meet that. And we'll end with that. But there's many things that we can be doing to drive on the tactical level. From a challenge perspective, moving on, the challenge perspective at the operational level, we'll look at the tenant supply chain processes. In this, it's all about digitization. We hear it on the news. We hear it everywhere we go. In autonomous planning in supply chain. So the KPIs are throughput, cost per unit. Do you have the right talent aligned, inventory accuracy, on time and full, as Greg mentioned. When you get to improvements, the digital twins and digital mapping, you can use process mining to digitally map your processes quickly and effectively. Digital twins will provide not only your digital transformation, but that autonomous planning. So if you have a real-time digital twin, like one of our other partners has, Creatosoft, they actually do autonomous planning in supply chain real time. They've been doing it for about 5 years now. And then you get into Internet of Things tracking, which is a requirement to drive that real-time visibility in retail, and then real-time analytics. And of course, you're going to have to be using some neural networks, AI, throughout that. And then the value prop here is, of course, customer satisfaction, driving it to what the customer wants and their needs, not to your perceived customer satisfaction metrics, but the customer's true customer satisfaction. And reduced headcount. You should be able to do this under reduced headcount, especially with not having enough workers for a lot of this work. Everything is going digital. And of course, being able to make decisions not on a weekly or monthly basis, but on a real-time basis, based on the data that you're collecting with your digital twins to drive your balance sheet. So that gives you a little bit of a idea of how to link everything together in the STO environment for retail. Hopefully you found that useful. Now we move on to Snoopy, very important perspective of the astronaut doll that soared in popularity in 1969, a year after the character became the safety mascot for which government organization? Was it A, Department of Agriculture, B, Internal Revenue Service, C, NASA, D, U.S. Treasury, or E, Department of Agriculture? So please enter it in the chat. I'm not really confident in this poll EV working. They just upgraded it. So we all know when you upgrade something, things don't always work as planned. So please feel free to answer in the letter A, B, C, D, or E. I remember in 1969, there was a few things going on in 69 back in the day. Can you remember where you were in 1969, or were you born yet? But I certainly remember that year. With that, I think I'll just go ahead and give the answer. It's NASA, because we landed on the moon. So that's was kind of a pivotal year for all of us in the space race back under the Cold War, just a few eons ago. All right, with that, we'll move on to, there, it finally worked. All right. So with that, we'll move on to our last section. Greg?
Yep, we'll finish up with a couple of use cases, like we said we would, coming out of the tool in the retail environment. So our first use case is essentially a retail exemplar. Again, on the left-hand side, pretty apparent. This company is what we would consider an exemplar. They're in the green in the area of the gauge. As you can see, their answers going through the tool are well within the exemplar area, which is the level 3 in the chart. So pretty much close to the center. They've been doing supply chain for a long time, and they're pretty good at it. So we wanted to share with you, they come out as a calculation overall as 2.75. That's why we consider them an exemplar in retail in supply chain. We'll show you the tier 2. We talked about tier 2, same company. You can see the calculation on the top right. You can see that we attempt to superimpose the strategic, tactical, and operational strengths on top of the as is. Gets a little busy in there. It's rather small, but essentially, remember, the lower the number on the chart, the stronger the tenet. So yes, they're very strong in operational. You can see on the bottom right, their calculation is 2.71. All right. What we show you is that the STO opportunity, the area for the biggest opportunity for improvement in this company is strategic, because that's the highest number. So essentially, they're very good. And if they were to exercise some improvement, perhaps they would want to take a look at the strategic elements within their company. So with that, we'll go to our second use case. Little different now. Same tool, different company. We will call this company Apprentice. Why? Because you can see they are much farther away from the center of excellence, if you will, in supply chain process maturity. That's why we call them an apprentice. They're in that gauge. Their calculation, much different than the first use case. They're at 7.15, which is why we consider them an apprentice. Let's take a look at tier 2. The tier 2, we superimpose again on the left, the blue, the red, and the green. And then again, we calculate the strengths of each of those 3 areas. As you can see, their strength is strategic. They have the lowest calculation, 6.83. And therefore, the area with the highest opportunity for improvement for this company would be operational, because that's the highest number. So, excuse me, that's the way we look at tier 1, tier 2. And then again, that drives dialogue and it drives improvement. So speaking of improvement, we'll finish the last section of our discussion in terms of benchmarking, some benchmarking stats that we consider. Take a look at this. This on the left-hand side are the readiness assessment tenets. We picked one from each group and gave you a KPI. And then on the right-hand side, the 3 columns are going from the bottom, the least mature, all the way up to the most mature, and give you a sense of what you can achieve. So one, strategic, on the top left, we took leadership. Under leadership, we talked about return on capital. What is that? That's the goal of capital. The point of calculating capital, return on capital, is to determine how good, how profitable a company's operations are. All right. So the higher the return on capital, the better the company allocates its capital. So you can see the increase from being at the laggard level, if you will, the lowest level, from 9% all the way up to 43%. So it does show improvement as you move up your process maturity. Second is tactical. We picked demand management. That's on time and full, important for retail. You can see the numbers on average when you move from the bottom in terms of maturity up to the most mature element. And then the third is operational. We picked supply chain processes. We picked a metric called cash conversion cycle. And that is the length of time that it takes for a company to convert its investments in inventory and other resources into cash flow from sales. So it's calculated in number of days. It's normally real simple: days inventory outstanding plus days receivables outstanding minus days payable outstanding. And the game plan is to go from highest to lowest. So you can see that if you're at the bottom of the maturity curve, 70 days in retail all the way down to 21 days, moving to 0 of the mature organizations. And I'll give you a data point. Zara, the retail apparel, who is one of the best, has a minus 45-day cash conversion cycle. They are a bank, folks. So we wanted to share those metrics of success with you, and I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. Very interesting discussion today. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to ask questions in the chat as we close out. Our next webinar is on NGO, and that'll be on September 26th. We hope to see you there, and we'll be talking more about the SDO and the assessment process that we've developed to help you make decisions, informed decisions with your management on where you are at and where you would like to go in the future. Our upcoming webinars are in automotive and electronics. Hope to see you there. With that, we'll close it out. Greg, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for attending. Listen, with high inflation, high interest rates, some new regulations regarding sustainability coming into this marketplace in retail, and possibly a continued slowing economy, we think it's more important than ever before to understand your supply chain process maturity, validate your supply chain strategy, your supply chain tactics, your supply chain operations, because they can and will provide you a strategic advantage in this post-pandemic arena. So with that, thanks for attending and all the best.
Again, thank you, Greg, for taking the time to share us your thoughts on the retail industry. And Connor, thank you for supporting the webinar. And most importantly, thank you for all your thoughts, insights, and joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Just remember that understanding the strategy behind your decision making, using a tool such as this, taking 30 minutes of your time to get your leadership aligned to a single action plan, while tracking your maturity, can greatly support you in your efforts to drive positive growth in your organization. We know that it's in leveraging each other that we become all better and more resilient. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in future webinars. Have a great day.